What's up, everybody? I'm 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting Adam Finkelstein, and this week we've got a little something new for you. It is our weekly recruiting recap, where we talk about all the biggest headlines, the commitments, the events, everything you could want to know in the world of recruiting. And to start things off, I am going to bring in the man himself, Travis Branham, to help me break down what we saw during a very busy week on the trail. Trav, what's up, my guy?
Nothing much, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. So you are back off the road. I know we were both traveling. I was with Bossy out at the Hoopah Classic. Where were you this weekend?
Yeah, I was just 2 hours north from my house, so I was up in Dayton, Ohio for the fly into the hoop. Bunch of the Midwest teams and a couple national teams fly in every single year. One of the best ones. They're known for their crate cups. If you don't know what a crate cup is, you got to come and try one out.
I do not know what a crate cup is. I gotta look into that. All right, so let's get right to it. Who impressed you the most this weekend? What were the biggest takeaways?
Biggest takeaways came from a handful of committed prospects, and first and foremost on night number one, it was Delquan Warren, a 2024 prospect, so a junior who is already off the board to Rutgers, who's in the midst of an absolutely outstanding class, which we will touch on later. He may be undersized, but this kid has a lot of fight in him. Gets downhill. He's really tough. He competes at an extremely high level on both ends of the court, and then just scores it from all three levels. He had a big night on that night one. He did fall short to a very loaded combine team. But aside from him, one guy that really intrigued me long term, he's been on our radar for a while, is Dalen Swain, who's off the board, headed to Xavier. He's really showing some serious progress right now with his high school team in his senior year. 6'7". He's athletic. He's fluid. He's skilled. And that was what really stood out, was just how skilled he was with the ball in his hands. He was getting by guys, and he was creating for other people, and just getting to his mid-range spots and also getting to the rim. The next step in his development, it's two things. First, getting stronger. Next thing is extending that range beyond the three-point line. But this is one that I think Xavier fans and the Xavier coaching staff is excited about the long-term upside that they're getting in him. Aside from him, Garwey Duwall, he's one that I've been high on all year. This team, he plays for SoCal Academy out of California, but he's actually from Indiana originally. And everywhere I go, it seems to be he's playing right in front of me. And he has just been continuing to improve, it seems, by each and every single night. Earlier this year, it was his finishing and scoring at the rim that really stood out. But this weekend, it was his shooting stroke. This is a kid that's never been known for being a shooter, always being a defender and slasher. But this time it was the shot. It's looking really good. It's smooth, clean release. Hit a pair of threes in the first viewing. He went cold in the second. But this again is a kid that continues to improve every step of the way. And then I can't. I was going to ask you.
I was going to ask you. We got to do it. So you're on SoCal Academy. There's another guard there, committed to Texas. You know, obviously, amidst the coaching change, everybody's talking about it. But what'd you see with A.J. Johnson?
Yeah, this is a kid. Again, I'm watching these guys every single week, it seems like. And A.J. Johnson, frankly, to be honest, is not having a spectacular senior year. This is a kid who we knew going back to the summer when we talked about him as a top 10 player, potentially top 5. He has all the natural talent and ability to get to that point, but we knew he had a lot of work to be done. And that is exactly what we are seeing this year. He's really having to take a step back, if you will, and learn how to play basketball the right way. This summer, he was a ball-dominant guard that could take basically whatever shot he wanted to. It results in a lot of highlight reel plays, but it's not necessarily winning basketball. So this year, right now, with this SoCal team, he's really trying to learn how to play without playing with basketball in his hands. So he's taking way less dribbles. He's playing off the ball, trying to learn how to shoot off the catch. I know a lot of fans don't really realize that, and it may come as a surprise what type of five-star didn't know how to shoot off the catch. A lot of these guys are just given the ball, and they're able to go do whatever they want. So shooting off the dribble comes very natural to them. But shooting off the catch, that is an area that many of these guys actually need to improve in, and that's really been very clearly the case with A.J. Johnson, and it's just really waning on his confidence. To be honest with you, this is just going to be a kid who needs time. His body is still very far behind him, and it's going to take some time for his frame to really catch up to everything else with his skill set and ability to create off the bounce. So still tremendous amount of upside. But again, whenever we talk about 5-star, everybody pops off. Oh, one and done. That's immediately what you think about. I think we need to start changing that narrative back. I think it's been just gone to the extreme on one day, and we need to kind of find that balance again. Not every 5-star is a one and done prospect, and that is projecting to be the case with, I would honestly say, 75% of the 5-stars in this 2023 class, and A.J. Johnson fits into that mold.
Now, while Travis was in Ohio at Fly Into the Hoop, Eric Bossi and I were in Springfield, Massachusetts, the birthplace of basketball, for one of the biggest high school events of the entire year, and that's the Spalding Hoop Hall Classic. And this year it was extra good because there was a sister event, the Hoop Hall Prep Showcase, right alongside it. That meant 3 total courts of action throughout 4 days, and there was a tremendous amount of players, both high school and prep school, for NBA scouts, because this was one of the 3 events this year they were allowed to attend, and college coaches alike, not to mention every AAU agent and runner in the business seemed to be in Springfield this year. So we're going to bring Travis back in, and I'm going to break down what I saw. And Trav, this is not going to come as a surprise, but the sophomores were the best again. And Cameron Boozer and Cooper Flagg. And you know what, to be honest, I didn't think either one of them was necessarily at their best on Monday. They both played Saturday. They both played Monday. I thought they were both phenomenal on Saturday. But even when they were, not necessarily their A game on Monday, I remember talking to some of the NBA scouts afterwards, and Boozer kind of led the way to this dramatic comeback from Christopher Columbus, his team, over Bronny James and Sierra Canyon. And I said to one of the NBA scouts afterwards, I said, believe it or not, he didn't play particularly well. And I've been really adamant throughout the course of the year that we need to try and temper our language around these guys, these kids really, because they're 15 years old. Because there's so many people saying like, hey, they're going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft as soon as they're there. Hey, they remind me of this NBA Hall of Famer. It's like, hold on, just they're 15 years old. Just let's recognize how talented they are, how good they are right now. But at the same time, as an industry, kind of learn from some of our mistakes of anointing these guys too young and putting the burden of expectations on them. And let me be very clear, that has nothing to do with Boozer and Flagg, because they were just as good as advertised. And that was honestly the biggest takeaway. And I will add this too. My favorite thing about both of those guys is they are basketball players. They are not social media celebrities. They are not playing to the cameras. They are about winning games, and they are both highly, highly intelligent players. So I know you've seen them a bunch, but that to me was just, that's the takeaway in high school basketball right now. Those 2 guys, and again, without projecting too far out, I will say this. Cooper Flagg right now, number 2 in 2025. He'd be number 1 in 2024 in my book. Probably be number 1 2023. I think Boozer's number 1 any of those 3 classes when you start projecting them out long term. I think they're that good, and we've got to be able to say that honestly right now without getting, while being very careful with like the long term projections. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it's not a surprise at all. We all talk behind the scenes about it all the time, just how impressive those 2 guys are in Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer. And honestly, I was telling, I was in Dayton, like I said, but I'm getting hit by NBA scouts at the same time. And that was one thing I was telling them, like, these are specifically about Flagg and Boozer. They're kind of refreshing in a lot of different ways, and they're 100%. Just different.
Yep.
And the fabric or the cloth they're cut from, if you will. And just, they're not social media guys. You're not going to find them anywhere, really. And everything that they are about is going out and competing and winning. That's it.
Winning. Yep.
And also, just for being such incredible talents, they both buy into their role on their team. They're not going to go out and try to force the issue and try to put up the highlight reel plays. Cooper Flagg, honestly, you can make a case. I watched him last week at the NIBC in LaPorte, Indiana. You can make a case he's too passive on the floor. So just two premier talents, two premier kids with their heads screwed on tight, if you will. So just so much to be excited for. But the one thing I will say, and I'm going to ask you about, that I was most curious about going into that week for you guys at Hoop Hall, is what was going to be the feedback? What were you guys going to learn, if anything new, about this 2023 senior class? Because we talk about it all the time. This is wide open race for number one. And frankly, as we were saying earlier in the show, there's potentially 75% of these guys could not be one and done type players. Obviously, there are 30 players who have to be drafted, so there's probably going to be a bit more than that. But just this class lacks some real star power, in my opinion. So I'm curious, what did you learn, and what were the kind of rumblings around Springfield from the NBA side of things?
Yeah, that everybody's as all over the board as we are, quite frankly. I mean, I think that we had just come out with our rankings a few days earlier, so everybody was kind of, looking through those and offering feedback. And quite frankly, I wanted that feedback, although I think that sometimes we're a little deeper in the process. Not sometimes. I think we are deeper in the process than a lot of these NBA scouts because they're limited in terms of when they can see them. But nonetheless, their feedback, I think, is really invaluable. So, I had one who said, you got it right with Collier. I had another one who said Castle's better than Collier. I had another one that said, Justin Edwards, he reminds me a lot of RJ Barrett light, excuse me. So it was all over the board. And I asked multiple people, and I did not get the same answer from anyone. And I think that quite honestly, and this is a little hard to say, but I think that the sentiment was, what does this mean for the 2024 draft when there's not a no-brainer here? And listen, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the guys who played well. Isaiah Collier, he went for 37-6. His team lost pretty convincingly to Bishop Gorman, but he was great attacking the rim. His passing stood out. I think that he could have easily had 10-plus assists if the ball was going in a little bit more for his teammates. Justin Edwards was fired up. He was going up against Ian Jackson, and I have never seen him more locked in on both ends of the floor. I know you're a big advocate of his. You would have loved it because he was like chirping on the defensive end of the floor, guarding Ian Jackson. Ian Jackson's trying to go somewhere. He's saying nope, and just shutting him down. So I loved what he was all about on that end of the floor. And then another guy who you're a big advocate for, Deshaun Harris-Smith, really, really impressive on both ends of the floor. Just his will to win and his motor. Those three guys were as good as advertised. The last one who I've got to bring up for Montverde, teammates with Cooper Flagg, was KJ Evans. KJ Evans, one time a top 2 prospect in the class. He is 6'10". He is as fluid as can possibly be. He's virtually ambidextrous around 5 feet of the basket. He's unselfish. He's a solid passer. And he's going to be a shooter, I believe, in time, because the stroke looks really fluid. He knocked it down. Now, he's not an alpha creator. He's not somebody you give him the ball and say, go to work, and the motor's got to keep picking up. But in terms of sheer talent, it was really, really glaring this weekend. So those were some of the biggest takeaways. But of course, as we talk about this weekend, and obviously with MLK weekend, there were a lot of big-time events. But there were also a lot of big-time commitments. And we already talked about one of these schools. Rutgers is making a major, major splash on the recruiting trail in recent weeks. So Travis, I'm going to bring it back to you now. Who did they get this week, and how important is this for Steve Pikiell and Rutgers?
Yeah, this past weekend, I think we were all caught a little by surprise that Ace Bailey, a 5-star prospect, one guy that we have all talked about potentially being the number 1 player. When you talk about just natural talent when it comes to size, length, athleticism, skill set, ability to score the ball, very well could be the number 1 player in this class. Has battled some injuries in the past, but they land a 5-star premier talent in the 2024 class in Ace Bailey out of Atlanta, Georgia, of all places. There's not many players in Atlanta that get outside of the Southeastern Conference. This is especially, honestly, right down the street, Auburn has made an absolute living and killing in that city. Yeah. They were on him hard. So Rutgers comes in and steals a premier talent nationally and also right in the backyard of a school like Auburn and Kentucky. Another blue blood was also in pursuit. So I don't think we can really underestimate or understate just how important this was for a Rutgers program. He is the highest ranked recruit in program history. I don't think that should be a surprise, but they are absolutely, they've got the ball rolling the past few years. And I know our guy, our teammate, Deshaun London, is very excited about the developments going on. And again, Ace Bailey, he joins another four-star kid, Delquan Warren, who fits that program perfectly, just how tough and gritty he is on both ends of the floor. So outstanding weekend and outstanding week for the Rutgers basketball program on the recruiting trail.
And I think we've also got to mention they are very firmly involved with Dylan Harper, who is a top 5 prospect in the class, likely to rise the next iteration of the 2024 rankings. It's widely perceived to be between Rutgers, where his older brother played, and Duke. He hasn't said that publicly, but those are perceived to be the 2 favorites at this point. That was not the only big commitment this week, and there was another surprise, and that was on Monday, Ian Jackson announced his commitment to North Carolina. And this is huge for a couple of reasons. Like Rutgers, North Carolina has done their work early in the class of 2024. In fact, they got a commitment from another 5-star prospect, Elliot Cadeau, just a couple weeks ago. So now, with a pair of 5-star prospects, Travis, here's my question, and I'll answer it if you'd like. Are these guys going in 23 or in 24?
I'm going to let you answer that one, Adam.
Okay. So I am. Let me say this. Both of these guys are older for their class. They have both been the subject of long-standing reclassification rumors. They've both maintained they're staying in the class of 2024. That's what everybody says. Recent history tells us that nobody reclasses in December. Typically, they wait until the grassroots season is over. It's also noteworthy to point out that this year, the grassroots season ends on July 10th, which is earlier than ever before. So theoretically, you could play another season of grassroots basketball. If there's potential opportunities tied to that, whether it be NIL or NBA scouts who are allowed to go to some of these events, and then maybe even make summer session too. So I think this is on the table, not just for these two, but I think it's on the table for a handful of players in the class of 2024. And when you look at North Carolina's roster, they may need it because, Leaky Black, he's out of eligibility. Nance is out of eligibility. Armando Bacot, he's a senior. He could come back for his COVID year, but he's going to graduate college. He may be ready to pursue those professional opportunities. Caleb Love, he's a junior. He may be ready to pursue those professional opportunities. So if you lose all 4, and right now you got Simeon Wilcher in that class, you got Zayden High in that class, you may need Elliot Cadeau and Ian Jackson. And Ian Jackson in particular, I think gives them the type of athletic wing that they don't necessarily have on this year's roster.
I'm going to piggyback that and give you another question here. Let's get educated, if you will. In your own opinion, is reclassifying a good idea? 1, 2, when, if not, or let's just get a little bit more specific, when is reclassifying a good idea for an athlete?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think that it should be more about age than graduation year. And I think when we look at the trend of late reclassifications, Gigi Jackson being the latest example, year before it was Amani Bates and Jalen Duren, I think it's really hard if you don't have the benefit of summer session. Because not only are you physically behind in terms of the strength and just getting your body ready for the rigors of college basketball, but then if you get further behind from a preparation standpoint, if your team's putting stuff in, it doesn't have to be plays. Maybe it's terminology. Maybe it's concepts. Those are big things in college programs. If you miss a summer session, I really think you get behind the 8 ball. Of course, a lot of this is about, let's just call it what it is. It's about a race to the money. In college with the world of NIL, it opens up different revenue opportunities for these kids. It also opens up a quicker path to the NBA draft if you are old enough and you are age eligible after 1 season. Amani Bates was not age eligible after 1 season. Jalen Duren, Gigi Jackson were. So I think these guys, theoretically, Elliot Cadeau has said it publicly. You mentioned Deshaun London. He told him, he said, I want to be a one and done. He owned it. And I think a lot of these kids and the people around him are going in thinking along those lines. But I think the situations that work out best are the kids that don't look at their year of college, whether it's reclassifying or not, as just some type of short stay on their way to the NBA. Because that can go really bad really quickly. And I think it's the ones who go in and really commit themselves to being a part of that team and that experience, who have the best season, who end up helping themselves the most in the process. So I don't want to make a wide, paint with a broad brush in terms of whether reclassification is a good idea or a bad idea. I think it's kid specific. But what I do think is really tough is if you join late and you miss summer session and you put yourself that much more behind the 8 ball. We'll see if that's a consideration for these guys as the summer goes on. Well, I tell you what, that was an action-packed first episode of the weekly recruiting recap. I hope you liked it. And we're just trying to keep raising the bar, from live commitments to expert analysis to all the latest recruiting updates, NBA draft info, college basketball analysis. Be sure to visit 247sports.com for all of the latest in the basketball world.